What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Generation Zero for my 30 Days of Traps. Today I'm going to be talking with you guys about lures. Instead of us setting up and designing a trap today, I thought it would be kind of good for us to talk about one of the most useful trap materials that is in the game. We're going to be talking about all of the different lures you can use and the different purposes and applications that you can use them for. So let's just jump right into things and start talking about these individual lures. So we're going to start off talking about the radio. The radio is the first lure that you're going to encounter in Generation Zero, and it will be your first opportunity to draw enemies into an area so that you can take them out effectively, or your first opportunity to draw enemies into a trap so that way you can spring your trap effectively. The radio is a small range lure, and in my opinion is best used when you want to control a very small group of enemies in the game. It's a great tool to use, and I highly advise you guys try out setting up a lot of these traps utilizing the radio so that things don't get too out of hand. Next up, we'll talk about the boombox here. The boombox is labeled a long-range lure, but in my opinion is only kind of more like a medium-range lure. The way the boombox works is it's essentially just a buffed-up radio, and again is great for controlling small to medium-sized groups of enemies. Next up, we've got the light comm array, and for the light comm array, essentially this is going to be your first introduction into longer range lures. I've found that the light comm array has a wider draw than the boombox, making it kind of the third most powerful lure you can use in the game. With this lure, you're going to be drawing in a lot more enemies, so you'll want to take a little bit of caution when you're using the light comm array in order to set up your traps and set up your combat situations. This lure is incredibly effective, though, for drawing in groups of enemies. Next up, we've got the medium comm array, and this is where we're getting into the real hairy kind of lures. And so, essentially, with the medium comm array, you can draw in a lot of enemies with this. Again, the medium comm array is the fourth most powerful, so essentially, this will be what you want to use if you're planning on directing a large group of enemies, but still maintaining a decent amount of control in the situation. And lastly, we have the heavy comm array. And the heavy comm array is for when you're really looking for a crazy fight. So the heavy comm array is effective across a massive range and will draw in enemies from much further than the lure will actually even have its effect for. I think that the heavy comm array is perfect for drawing in as many enemies as you can into the area, and then kind of balancing that out with other smaller range lures in order to control the group that you have brought in. A lot of times with the heavy comm array, you'll find yourself encountering tanks charging from a massive distance and far more enemies than you would expect. But the heavy comm array is perfect for setting up situations where you're trying to thrill seek, if you're trying to grind experience, or if you're setting up a massive trap in order to take down a lot of machines. So with the ranges of the lures kind of out of the way there, let's talk about how I like to use these lures. I'm going to show you guys the effectiveness of the heavy comm array and how you can draw in tons and tons of enemies to set up a crazy situation. And you guys will notice throughout my trap series me utilizing these lures in order to set up my traps efficiently. So let's get going and figure out how many enemies we can draw in at any given time with these heavy lures. So when you're setting up your heavy lure here, one of the first things you're going to want to do when you set the lure is get as far away from the heavy lure as you possibly can, so that way you can actually observe how many enemies you've drawn in to the location. And in order to get away effectively, we're going to use one of my oldie goldie kind of tips here, in which case we're doing some stealth walking. So as you'll notice from that lure, we were able to draw in a lot of enemies, but we didn't quite reach the 2 tanks that were out there. So again, it's kind of a good idea to just pay attention to how many things are in your immediate location. Luckily enough, it was all enemies coming from the same direction, so it'll be pretty easy to take care of all of these enemies here. Well, as you could see there, taking out all of those enemies was really, really easy due to the fact that I had them all grouped pretty easily together. I was able to get a couple sniper shots that even was taking out 2 of the doggos at once, and now we just have a tank sitting here because something that I've found in my own experience is that the sound that the Seekers will put off actually has a much wider and longer range than the lubers that you'll pick up from them. So let's finish this tank off here real quick and real easy. We're going to try to draw this tank out, but at the same time separate the runners from the entire pack of this guy. So first off, we're going to use the medium comm over by the fire station here. We did get spotted a little bit there. But let's put down that lure. So that was way crazier than I expected. I'm gonna take a second here to just kind of tone myself down, and then we'll properly close off the video here. So there we go. Things got out of hand pretty quick there, but that's a perfect example of how you can utilize these lures to draw in tons of enemies and kind of thrill seek from the situation. Drawing in an absurd amount of enemies and then taking them all out like you're some sort of robot Terminator or something like that. So, I think that this has been a pretty solid explanation on lures and how you can combo lures together and utilize them to kind of control the flow of your enemies and stuff like that. If there's anything you guys have to add for how you can use lures in this game effectively, please post them up in the comments down below. But for now, I've been Tenebris, you've been awesome, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.